Raspberry is a kind of a grateful crop. If you take care of it properly, it will give a great yield of large sweet berries, and the bushes will grow in the same place for several years in a row. However, good care means not only regular watering and fertilizing, but also the correct pruning of the plants. This important procedure directly affects the yield, health, and growth energy of the bushes. Welcome to Big Progress, and let's figure out how to determine the best time for pruning raspberries and how to double the yield. Summer-bearing and ever-bearing varieties of raspberry are pruned differently. Moreover, there are many approaches for each variation. Now we are going to explain all the intricacies in order for you to understand how to trim your specific type of raspberry. Pruning of summer-bearing raspberries. On summer-bearing varieties of raspberry, berries grow on the previous year's branches. These plants fruit only once per season, usually in mid-summer. After that, the mission of the fruiting shoots is over, and so they should be removed. The concern of beginner gardeners is to choose the perfect time for the procedure. There are different opinions on that issue. Here are the three most popular of them. Pruning in the fall. Many gardeners delay pruning raspberries up to the fall, doing it along with preparing the bushes for wintering. In this case, all the shoots that have already finished fruiting should be cut, as well as the weakened and infested young branches. In regions with severe winters, the raspberry branches are carefully bent and then attached to the ground with improvised materials. It is important to carry out this procedure before the frost, since at negative temperatures raspberries become fragile and break easily during bending. If you've chosen this period for pruning, then at the beginning of the summer it is advisable to select the shoots that have appeared in the current season and so will yield the next year. For this purpose, choose and retain the strongest bushes and then make adjustments during the autumn pruning. The plants that haven't made it well should be removed. In addition, don't forget to cut the unnecessary young shoots during the entire season, preventing them from growing above 10 to 15 centimeters. This should be done not to let them drain the strength from other bushes. Sorting the shoots out, you may follow the next guide. If you use the tape planting method, then maintain the 1.5 to 2 meter distance between the rows, allowing for a maximum of 8 to 10 shoots to grow at a linear meter of a row. If you use the cluster method, then place the plants at a distance of at least 60 to 70 centimeters from each other and leave 4 or 5 young branches in every bush. Pruning in spring. If the complete pruning of raspberries was carried out in fall, then in spring you will only need to inspect the 1-year-old shoots after wintering. Lift the branches from the ground and remove the completely frozen ones. Then tie all the remaining shoots to a support. Some gardeners combine the spring check of shoots after winter with cutting out the branches that have borne berries during the previous season. This is usually done by those who don't prepare their raspberries for wintering in the fall, or by those who are very tired of garden problems and always leave pruning the raspberries for later. Pruning in summer. More hardworking and most importantly more thoughtful gardeners usually do the work in pruning raspberries in the summertime. At the beginning of the summer they sort out the new shoots and then tirelessly remove the excessive ones around the bushes. They cut out the fruiting branches immediately after last harvest, at the end of July or the first half of August depending on the variety of the plant and the area. This approach really makes sense. Why should the gardener keep the shoots in the raspberry garden if they won't provide any benefit? If these branches are removed immediately after harvesting, the young shoots will get more space and light and so will develop better and have more time to mature by the fall. As a result, raspberries will give much more flower buds the next season. In the fall, you will need to make a small adjustment to remove the shoots that didn't meet the expectations, weakened, broke, or were hit by diseases or pests, and then bend the rest of the bushes to the ground. And if the winters in the region are severe, protect them from the frost. In spring, raise the last year's shoots on a trellis, examine them and remove or shorten the branches damaged by frost, shortening young shoots to increase yields. Novice gardeners usually do only basic raspberry pruning, which means the removal of shoots that have finished fruiting and control of the amount of young branches. But it's not the only way to increase your yield. Experienced raspberry planters prune the young shoots as well. As a result, lateral branches begin to grow and to give berries. Method 1. The most common option is cutting off the last year's shoots. This procedure is carried out in early spring, during the check of bushes. As it was mentioned above, the completely frozen ones are removed, and the ones with damaged tops are shortened to a well-developed bud. If a bush has survived the winter without harm, then just cut the top 10 to 15 centimeters. Lateral branches will form on the pruned shoots from leaf axils, and then there will be flowers and berries. This approach increases yield significantly. Method 2. In spring, the strong and healthy shoots of the previous year are divided into 3 groups. The tops of the first group are shortened by 10 to 15 centimeters. The branches of the second group are cut to half of their height. The rest are pruned to the level of 15 to 20 centimeters from the soil surface. Raspberries of each group give lateral branches, on which the berries will grow, but the shorter the main stem is, the later it will start fruiting. In the first group, the berries ripen at the usual time, which depends on the variety of raspberry. Then comes the turn of the second group, and the shorties begin bearing fruit at the very last. As a result, the gardener extends the fruiting period and gets the opportunity to enjoy fresh raspberries until late autumn. Method 3. This method was popularized by A.G. Sobolev, an experienced gardener who increased the yield of summer-bearing raspberries up to 2 to 2.5 times and extended its fruiting period up to the first frost. This technique assumes pruning raspberries 2 times. At the end of May or at the beginning of June, the new branches are sorted out, and then their tops are shortened by 10 to 15 centimeters. By this time, they usually reach the height of 0.8 to 1 meter. The next spring, right after the melting of snow, the lateral branches are pruned, which have grown to 30 to 50 centimeters during the past season. They should be shortened by 10 to 12 centimeters. After the second procedure, the pruned shoots begin to bush actively. Eventually, they turn into a small tree. On both lateral shoots and main stem, twigs with flower buds form. Later, the berries will grow in the places of these buds. The advantage of this method is the extended fruiting period of raspberry trees. They delight the gardeners with berries until the late autumn. The most important thing here is not to allow the raspberries to turn into jungle. No more than 4 to 6 branches should be left on each linear meter of a raspberry row, and the intervals between the rows should be about 2 meters. These bushes must be carefully tied to the support, since they are unable to withstand the load of great yield. Summary. With the first method, which is just the pruning of last year's shoots, the branches that have already finished fruiting can be cut out right after all the berries are collected. It may be summer, autumn, or spring. When using the second method, you can gradually remove the shoots, moving from the tall branches to the short ones. With a double-time shortening of shoots, which is the third method, raspberries will bear fruit until frost. Therefore, no shoots are removed in summer. Pruning of ever-bearing raspberry. Unlike summer-bearing raspberries, ever-bearing ones have a great feature. They're capable of producing crops on both last year's shoots and branches that have appeared in the current season. Fruiting period of ever-bearing raspberry may differ depending on the method of pruning. Method 1. Raspberry pruning is carried out in early spring. Last year's shoots are examined, frozen ones are removed, and healthy ones are pruned. The optimal amount of the strongest branches should be left in the garden. They will give the first yield in June or July depending on the variety. At the beginning of summer, new shoots will grow up and require another pruning to remove the underdeveloped ones and save only the strongest. These branches will manage to give flower buds, bloom, and please the gardener with a new portion of berries by the end of the summer. In order for the young shoots to develop well, the fruiting branches should be immediately removed after they give all the berries. In autumn, after the second harvesting, the branches of the current season should be shortened by 10 to 15 centimeters and then prepared for winter. The same procedure is carried out the next spring. It's important to mention that such pruning of ever-bearing raspberries would be suitable for southern regions. In the north, the second yield often fails to ripen. Method 2. At northern latitudes, there is another method of pruning the ever-bearing raspberries, which allows getting only one yield. But it will be great and of good quality, and the plants will bear fruit for 2 to 2.5 months, from the second half of summer to frost, depending on the variety. In autumn, before the onset of constant cold weather, all shoots are cut at ground level. In spring, the amount of young growth should be controlled to prevent overgrowing. It is worth mentioning that the ever-bearing raspberry is much more tender than its summer-bearing relative. It will require tremendous care from the gardener. The key to success lies not only in strict adherence to the agricultural techniques and correct pruning of such plants, but also in accurate selection of variations suitable for the region. It's up to you to decide what approach to use in pruning raspberries. The main thing is that in the to-do list of annual garden procedures, this one has to be marked as important. This is the kind of attitude your raspberries will like the most, and so the plants will certainly thank you with great yields of large sweet berries. And how do you prune your raspberries? Share your methods of pruning and other tips to achieve a great harvest in the comment section.